So silly holding these. Ooh, a little dressing with the jam would be fun. That's too much. I don't need to do that right now. Oh my god, you guys. JB here, and today I'm going to show you how I make my Chanterelle Apricot Tart. The whole purpose of this is that it feels really special and exciting to share with friends and family, you know, for a brunch, if you've got guests staying over for the weekend. But it's super easy. It comes together in under 30 minutes, and it's just 5 ingredients. The tart crust, apricot jam, cream cheese, thyme, and mushrooms. So super easy. We're going to jump right in. So these are chanterelles. If you're not familiar, I'll talk more about those in a second, but I really wanted to make a dish that felt like it imbued that same sense of like reverence for the ingredient. It's designed and scaled to share and serve to your community, to your friends and your family around you. But it takes out all of the like extra labor that is usually required to create something that feels, you know, spectacular, extravagant. It takes all the pressure off of you and lets you focus on your guests and the people you love. If you're not much of a baker, buy the tart crust. It's not that deep. But if you do like to make it yourself, use whatever recipe you feel comfortable with, one that you've used before. I made this crust last night. You can see it's a little bit wonky. That's totally fine. That's not the most important part of the recipe, but it is going to give us a solid base for what we're going to work with. So that's the tart crust. That I recommend making the night before. And then the other thing we're going to do the night before is make a cream cheese disc. So if you want to do this day of, totally fine. But it gets a little challenging to layer the jam and the cream cheese together. I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. I want to show you what I do, a little trick that I do ahead of time, just to make that whole process go easier. This is going to look kind of crazy, but I promise it's going to make sense in a second. So this is an 8-ounce block of cream cheese. The recipe calls for 4 ounces. I usually use somewhere between 4 and 6. Again, you don't need to be super particular about it. I'm just going to open this right up. I'm going to take a small cutting board, this guy right here, and I'm going to wrap it in some cellophane. So what we're going to be doing is spreading the cream cheese on the cellophane. So to keep it from like moving around, I'm just going to wrap the whole board real quick. So we're just creating that little base to get the cream cheese on. I'm going to put in about 4 ounces. I might end up putting in a little bit more. And I'm going to just spread this into a disc. It does sometimes get a little challenging. You'll see here it like keeps popping back up. So I'm going to be very honest, and people may not like this. I'm going to be very vulnerable. The easiest way to do this is to just get in with your hands and press it into a disc. Make sure your hands are clean. Honestly, this brings back a lot of like Play-Doh and like early childhood memories. It's kind of fun to play with your food like this. Also, like, your guests don't have to see you do this. This is what you do the night before when you're like, you know, a little bit bored. Maybe you've had a couple beers in you and you just kind of want to play around play around with the cream cheese a little bit. I've got this like weird, you know, disc of cream cheese. I'm going to fold the saran wrap right over. And that's exactly what we're making. And I'm going to throw this into the freezer. And here's what it's going to look like when it comes out. So this is what the product is the next day. It's just a frozen block of cream cheese, but here's why it's super important. When we go to layer things into this tart, it's going to get goopy really fast. This is going to make everything a lot easier. That's all that I'm mentioning to prep. Either make that crust the day before or buy it. And then if you have the bandwidth, freeze this little cream cheese disc. It's going to make everything day of really easy. Okay, it's day of. This is where it all comes together real quick. So I'm going to start with that blind baked or par baked tart crust. And the first thing I'm layering in is an apricot jam. It's very frequent that people think that chanterelles smell like apricots or peaches. And so that's why we're kind of pairing that with this jam here. If you really want to go for the gold, feel free to, you know, use a foraged fruit jam or some preserve that you've made. And if that's not an option for you, grab whatever jam you can from the grocery store. I just want enough that it feels like a solid layer, but I'm not going to overwhelm the flavor of everything. Jam's in, super easy. And this is where this frozen cream cheese disc comes in handy. If I was using fresh room temperature cream cheese, you'd be trying to like swirl it in, and you can totally do that. But it just gets a lot easier if you have this disc and you can just plop it right on. We're just going to place it right in. And I'm just really making sure it feels sturdy in there. Everything's kind of like in its spot. Sweet. And that's done. Chanterelles. That's a common name for mushrooms that are usually in the Chanterellus genus. Sometimes ones in the Craterellus are also considered chanterelles, and there's a few others, but mainly you're going to be looking at Chanterellus. These ones are really beautiful to find. They've got these, iconic, beautiful yellow, orange, sometimes peachy, bright, vibrant colors. The aroma is also usually quite fruity. Insides are bright white and solid all the way through. And they've got this great, again, kind of meaty texture. So these are awesome for a lot of different savory applications and sweet applications. I know some people preserve these in brandy as like a dessert, and they're so delicious. What we're going to do is we're going to cook them off before we put them in that tart. Mushrooms are very high in moisture, so when they cook down, they shrink a lot because all that moisture is getting turned into steam and evaporating off. So we're going to pre-cook these in the pan a little bit first, and then we're going to baste them with enough fat that they are super unctuous when you bite into them, and then we're going to layer them into that tart and cook it off. I'm going to start by just splitting these in half. Yeah, these ones are cute. Wow, look how beautiful that is right in the middle. These are looking good. I'm gonna go straight into my my pan right now. I'm using a nonstick. Feel free to use a cast iron, whatever you're comfortable with. I'm going in with no fat. These are just going straight into the pan dry. We're gonna stir this up a lot. I'm not trying to get like crazy browning on these. I'm just trying to cook them down enough so they like shrink a little bit. While those are starting to cook down, I'm gonna get my thyme ready. Nothing fancy here. I'm just getting those leaves into a little jar. If you're a forager yourself, go grab some fresh wild thyme. You can also use any other kind of, wild herb that you kind of have a hankering for. Maybe some bee balm. It can even be like carrot leaves if you wanted something in that world. But I think thyme pairs really well with chanterelles and really well with that apricot jam. So if you have wild thyme, use that. Yeah, so there's a lot of liquid happening in this pan, and that's because these are super fresh. These got sent to me right from one of our foragers on Foraged. If you're buying a mushroom from a store, they're often like a lot lighter than what you get when they're first harvested, because from the time from harvest to processing to transit to getting into like a grocery store and then getting to your home, it's lost so much moisture that they're gonna be a lot more lightweight and like less dense and juicy. So part of the beauty of ordering from Forage is that that supply chain is much shorter, and so those mushrooms come straight to you. So they're going to be like heavier and have a better moisture content than something you get in the store. Yeah, so you can already see how much these are reducing from when they were first in the pan. That's exactly what we want, because if these were going straight into the oven, even though they're probably going to be in there for long enough to technically cook through, all that liquid that's going to be going off would be going straight into the tart and making it soggy. This is exactly what we want to see. These are still cooking down, just got a little bit more to go. Okay, so some of these are starting to stick to the pan. You'll notice that the steam has stopped like really coming off. So that's exactly where we want to be. I'm being pretty gentle with these, but now's the time to go in and add a little bit of fat. So I've got some butter here. Just putting in like a tablespoon or two. We may add a little bit more, but for now, what we're going to do is go in and salt them a little bit. See, it's all about to come together. Oven's preheated, mushrooms are ready, the thyme is going onto this cream cheese. You'll see that it's become room temperature now. So I'm just going to start sprinkling on the thyme. I'm going to grab these chanterelles and get them onto the tart, cut side down to kind of make sure that the beautiful shape of those chanterelles is coming through. You don't need to be super finicky about this. I'm going to kind of line them up, but feel free to just dump and throw them in the oven. I want it to be like a solid row or a solid layer of chanterelles. I don't want to see much of that cream cheese popping through. So something you may notice that the size of this pan is much larger than the size of the actual tart crust. And that's again because they shrunk down so much when they cooked. So when you're getting mushrooms to make it, make sure you've got more than you think you're going to need to fill that tart crust, because you can see how much they've kind of shrunk and how much it takes to actually fill the top of that tart. Everything's layered up. I'm going to throw this in the oven somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes, just depending on what kind of tart crust you're using. I'm going to keep an eye on the edge of this crust and the tops of the mushrooms. And while this is in the oven, I'm going to make a little side salad to serve with it. Okay, sweet. I'm just gonna make a little simple salad with some wild greens that I foraged yesterday. Again, if you're not a forager yourself, or if you're still learning, I think this is also great served with just a simple arugula salad on the side. I just got a mix of like dandelion, lamb's quarter, some carrot, some wild carrot, some wood sorrel. I'm just gonna dress this super simply with a little bit of vinegar and a little bit of oil. So again, I'm using a Japanese knotweed infused vinegar that's kind of lemony, a little bit bright, and then a little bit of hickory nut oil that's pretty neutral. Has a little bit of sweetness and nuttiness to it, but feel free. I really encourage you to use what you have. If it's arugula and apple cider vinegar and olive oil, that's going to work perfectly. I've got my little bowl of greens. I'm going to come in with just a little bit of Japanese knotweed vinegar. This recipe is on foraged.com if you want to try it yourself. Get these greens dressed. Give them a taste. Make sure they're tasting like pleasantly acidic. Very nice. And I'm going in with a little bit of hickory oil. I don't need to overdress this. And while we're here, why not? I've got some pea flowers that I foraged. Throw a couple of those in there, a couple jewelweed flowers, and a little bit of goldenrod. Sweet, it's smelling like it's done, so I'm gonna grab it out of the oven. It smells really good. It is like a little bit mushroomy, a little bit fruity, definitely savory. You get the aroma of the thyme. It's really lovely. Oh, and you can also see that like most of this is just super golden brown. So I'm excited. I'm gonna grab something to take it out of the mold. Beauty, beautiful. Nice. Oh, I keep getting a whiff of it. It's like so like sweet and savory at the same time. Very nice. Okay. This is cooled down. It's smelling really great. I'm gonna cut into this. It looks so good. Yeah. Beautiful. And I'm serving with just a little bit of wild greens on the side. Oh, yes, okay. That little layer of jam, that little layer of cream cheese is looking sweet. It's beautifully fatty. There's a little bit of tang, a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of saltiness. It really kind of hits everything. And then you get this great little, just like a little mess of bitterness on the side. This is like my perfect brunch. Again, this was my Chanterelle Apricot Tart, and you can get the full recipe on foraged.com.